As state and city leaders work to find more ways to keep residents and their homes safe, we're learning about a new report, Preventing Another Ida, that details what the city needs to do to prevent this from ever happening again.
Joining us now is Marcel Negre, one of the study's authors. He is senior planner with the Regional Plan Association of RPA.
Now, RPA is a nonprofit that develops ideas to improve economic health, environmental resiliency, and quality of life in New York City. Marcel, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
So glad you're with us. With climate change, it's only going to get worse. What does your report suggest needs to be done right now?
So just two important things to highlight from our study. Number one, there's a need to increase stormwater management capacity with green infrastructure. Our study found that in order to fully eliminate flood accumulations of 12 inches, which is a type of flooding that happens during extreme rain events such as Ida, the stormwater management capacity coming from green infrastructure in central Queens would need to expand and increase by approximately 40 times over from the current drainage capacity. Now, this means that the expansion of this type of infrastructure would represent approximately 120 acres of surface area. This, of course, points to the need to rethink streets and sidewalks to prioritize designed urban landscape interventions such as bioswales, rain gardens, and green streets over cars and pavements. While 120 acres of surface area sounds like a lot, this only represents 5% of the total road space in central Queens. And then number two, I would also highlight the need to provide a legal framework to regulate basements. Even though basement apartments are common in the city's housing stock, they do not conform to zoning requirements and are considered illegal. This situation often creates uncertainty and housing insecurity among the tenants and impedes the ability to improve the safety and livability conditions of these types of residences. Zoning changes to help legalize basement apartments should be paired with a set of robust assistance programs aiming to retrofit potential viable units, providing technical and design support whenever needed, as well as ensuring access to financing alternatives.
So, Marcel, when most people think of storm damage or the risk of dying in a storm, they don't think about storm water so much. What is stormwater and why is it so dangerous?
Stormwater is the result of the runoff that accumulates after an extreme rain event or an intense rain event. Different from the type of coastal flooding that the city experienced with Hurricane Sandy, for instance, which affects mostly the waterfront and the coastal areas of the city. Stormwater can affect pretty much anywhere that has poor drainage conditions, but it could also be upland. And so that's the main difference that the remnants of Hurricane Ida left for the city to learn and grapple with.
How do we keep water out of people's homes? Let's talk about the green infrastructure methods that can help with this.
There's various ways that the city has been implementing for nearly a decade. That includes bioswales, or also known as enhanced tree pits, which are installed by the sidewalks or in the road space, intended to capture stormwater runoff before it enters the sewer system. That's the most prevailing and common type of green infrastructure that we see, but green infrastructure also includes green roofs and rain gardens that could be installed in private property.
So, your study found that just 3 acres, I can't believe this number, 3 acres in central Queens is devoted to stormwater management. How many acres would be necessary to make an actual difference there?
Yes, as I mentioned, for about 10 years, the city has been installing these types of green infrastructure, and so far, Central Queens only has about 3 acres of it. But it would need about 120 acres if we want to manage the amount of stormwater runoff that a rain event such as Ida would generate, which is approximately an intensity of about 3.5 inches per hour. So we need about roughly 120 acres of surface area to install that type of infrastructure.
What's your concern about the upcoming storm season? What are you expecting?
Well, we certainly, these implementations will take time to see them operational. And so in the meantime, I think it's concerning to see the difficulty to put emergency preparedness programs in place. That's a challenge that has to happen as well. as well as a long-term and infrastructure. But my concern is the inability to communicate the importance of this to the tenants and most vulnerable communities.
And Marcel, these projects and the things you talk about here, it sounds expensive, and we know obviously cost is always at the center of any time you need to make massive changes, even though it would help greatly. Do you sense that the city, there's a willingness there to make the necessary changes that need to be made?
Yeah, I think we are in an important moment where we will see those changes, hopefully. On the one hand, there's been important changes and new funding streams coming all the way from the federal government and the state level, which we're very optimistic that the city will be tapping into to make the best out of those new resources and do the types of things that we're suggesting in this report. But it also requires a little bit of a mindset change. When I alluded to the need to prioritize green infrastructure over cars and pavement, that's one example. But also the importance to understand this issue as a health equity issue. If we center health equity in this type of decision-making process, it'll be a lot easier to justify the costs associated with these impacts.
Marcel, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And CBS News New York is running a series of reports on Ida 1 year later. For more information, you can go to our website, cbsnewyork.com.